When people hear the word simplicity, they often think of less possessions or of living without certain luxuries. But simplicity is not about denying life. It is about understanding life. In Shaolin teaching we say, the more noise you remove, the clearer the silence becomes. The more you strip away what is unnecessary, the more you can feel what is essential. Today we live in a world where complexity is glorified. Many chase after more money, more status, more recognition. But happiness is never found in more. Happiness is found when you realize you already have enough. Simplicity is not weakness, it is strength. To live simply requires discipline. To say no to what is unnecessary requires clarity. And to walk lightly in life requires courage. The practice of simplicity allows your mind to become still, your body to become free, and your spirit to connect with what is true. When your life is less cluttered, joy finds space to enter. So remember, happiness is not hidden in what you accumulate. It is revealed in what you let go of. When we speak about clarity, most people think of understanding something with the mind. They imagine knowledge, facts, or reasoning. But clarity in the Shaolin tradition goes beyond the intellect. It is a way of seeing life itself without the fog that is created by unnecessary distractions. The truth is that our lives are often not complicated because of what is essential, but because of what is extra. We carry too many objects, too many thoughts, too many expectations. This creates a weight, a burden that blurs our inner vision. In this blurred vision, happiness becomes difficult to find. But once we begin to remove the layers of excess, a new type of clarity emerges, not the clarity of calculation but the clarity of perception. It is like water. When disturbed it is cloudy, but when left still it reflects the sky. The same happens with our inner world when we live with less. Modern society conditions us to believe that more is always better. More knowledge, more possessions, more options, more recognition. We are encouraged to pursue endlessly, as though accumulation itself guarantees meaning. But the opposite is true. The more we collect without discrimination, the more crowded our minds become. Imagine walking into a room that is filled with objects from floor to ceiling, so packed that you can barely move. In such a room you cannot rest, you cannot breathe, you cannot even see clearly. This is the state of many modern lives, filled with information, desires and possessions, but empty of space. And where there is no space, there can be no clarity. In order to see the path forward, one must first clear the room. This is why simplicity is the foundation for understanding. It is not about having less in a material sense only. It is about learning to create space within and around you. The practice of creating clarity through less is not passive, it requires deliberate action. One must learn to distinguish between what is necessary and what is unnecessary. This sounds simple, but in truth, it is one of the most difficult practices, because our attachments often disguise themselves as needs. A person might say, I need this recognition to feel valued, or I need this possession to feel secure. But upon deeper reflection, these are not needs, they are desires. Needs are few: food, shelter, clothing, companionship. Desires are infinite. If we live by desires, our mind is never still. Every day becomes a chase, and clarity is lost in the pursuit. But if we train ourselves to ask with each choice, is this essential, or is this noise? We begin to strip away the unnecessary. Like a sculptor who removes stone to reveal the figure hidden inside, we too remove excess until the true form of our life is revealed. This is the essence of clarity through less. The reward of this practice is profound. When you carry less, both materially and mentally, life becomes lighter. The mind is no longer pulled in 1,000 directions but begins to settle like calm water. In this calmness you start to notice what has always been present but overlooked: the breath moving through your body, the beauty of silence, the value of a single sincere relationship, the wonder in a simple sunrise. These are not small things, they are the essence of life itself. Yet they remain hidden when we are too busy chasing what we believe we lack. By letting go, we do not lose. We gain vision, we gain the ability to see what is real, what is nourishing, what is worth our time. This clarity is not given from outside. It is cultivated by the courage to simplify, by the discipline to let go, and by the patience to remain present. It is in this state that the seeds of happiness take root, because happiness is never far away, it is only hidden beneath the noise. One of the greatest causes of suffering in human life is attachment. This is not a new teaching, it has been understood in Buddhism, Taoism, and in many wisdom traditions for thousands of years. Yet it remains one of the hardest lessons to live. Why? Because the nature of attachment is subtle. At first it feels like love, like passion, like dedication, but with time it often transforms into chains that bind the spirit. When we cling too tightly to people, to possessions, to recognition, even to our own ideas, we create a dependency. Our happiness becomes linked not to our own inner balance, but to whether the outside world gives or takes these things away. And since the outside world is constantly changing, our happiness becomes fragile. Freedom from attachment does not mean rejecting life, nor does it mean abandoning relationships or responsibilities. It means to engage with life fully, but without clinging, without making your joy dependent on things that are beyond your control. To understand this, imagine holding water in your hands. If you hold it gently, with open palms, the water remains. But if you clutch it tightly, it slips through your fingers. This is the nature of attachment. The tighter we cling, the more likely we are to lose what we cling to. Many people live in constant fear because they are attached to outcomes, the fear of losing wealth, the fear of losing status, the fear of losing affection. But fear is not freedom, it is a prison created by attachment. A mind dominated by fear cannot be still, cannot be at peace, cannot taste true happiness. The Shaolin path teaches us that the only way to live without fear is to loosen the grip, to accept impermanence as the natural flow of life. Everything changes, this is the only certainty. When we learn to flow with change instead of resisting it, we discover a deeper type of strength, one that no loss can take away. But how do we practice this freedom in daily life? It begins with awareness. Observe your own mind and ask, what am I afraid to lose? What do I feel I cannot live without? These are the roots of attachment. Some attachments are easy to recognize: money, possessions, status. Others are hidden in more subtle forms, like the attachment to always being right, or the attachment to a specific identity we have created for ourselves. Each attachment acts like a string that ties us to fear. The more strings there are, the less free we feel. Freedom from attachment is the process of cutting these strings, not all at once, but gradually, through discipline and understanding. For example, you may begin by practicing non-attachment to outcomes. Do your best in your work, but do not tie your self-worth to success or failure. Offer love to others, but do not make your happiness dependent on how they respond. Practice generosity, not because you expect gratitude, but because giving itself is a joy. Each small act of non-attachment strengthens the spirit and lightens the heart. The beauty of living without attachment is that it does not diminish love or joy, it deepens them. When you are free, you no longer love someone out of need, but out of sincerity. You no longer work for recognition, but for the joy of the work itself. You no longer cling to possessions, but you appreciate them without fear of losing them. This is a paradox. The less you cling, the more deeply you experience life. When you are no longer enslaved by attachments, you become open, present, and alive in each moment. The fear of loss no longer poisons your joy, and you discover that happiness was never in the things themselves, it was always in the freedom of your own mind. Freedom from attachment is not escape from life, it is the art of living fully, without chains, without fear, and without the endless hunger that comes from believing you are incomplete. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many see it as restriction, as denial, as something heavy that takes away joy. But discipline is not about losing freedom, it is about creating it. Without discipline, the mind is scattered, the body is restless, and the spirit is weak. One of the most important disciplines we can cultivate is the ability to say no. In a world where countless distractions, temptations, and demands surround us, saying yes to everything is the surest path to exhaustion and confusion. The Shaolin Way teaches that life is not only about what you practice, but also about what you avoid. Just as a warrior learns not only how to strike, but when not to strike, the practice of self-mastery begins with knowing when to refuse. To say no is not an act of rejection, but of protection. Protection of your time, your energy, your clarity, and ultimately your happiness. We must understand that every yes we give is also a no to something else. When you say yes to endless work obligations, you may be saying no to your own rest. When you say yes to unnecessary possessions, you may be saying no to financial peace. When you say yes to constant social distractions, you may be saying no to silence and self-reflection. Most people do not realize this trait. They think they can say yes to everything, but life does not work this way. Our energy is limited, our time is finite, and our attention is fragile. To waste these on things that do not nourish the soul is to slowly drain the essence of life itself. Therefore, discipline is not cruelty, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that to protect what is essential, we must consciously turn away from what is not. To say no requires strength, because it often means disappointing others or confronting our own desire. But every time we practice it, we sharpen our clarity and we reclaim a piece of our freedom. This discipline is also a form of training the mind. The mind, if left untrained, is like a monkey, jumping from one branch to another, restless and unsteady. Modern life makes this even worse, because everywhere we look there are invitations to distraction, the endless scroll of information, the lure of entertainment, the pull of comparison. Without the ability to say no, the mind becomes enslaved to these impulses. A warrior trains not only the body, but also the will. To sit in silence when the world demands noise is an act of power. To resist indulgence when the senses crave stimulation is an act of strength. And to walk away from what does not serve your higher path is not loss, it is liberation. The Shaolin monks practice simplicity, not because they lack options, but because they choose discipline over chaos. This choice is available to everyone. Each no becomes a strike against the chains of distraction, and a step toward the mastery of self. In learning to say no, something remarkable happens. You begin to discover what truly matters to you. At first it feels uncomfortable, like leaving behind an old habit or resisting a sweet temptation, but slowly, the space created by your discipline fills with clarity. You realize you do not need as much as you thought. You see that most distractions only concealed the deeper purpose waiting beneath. When you say no to noise, silence reveals its wisdom. When you say no to excess, simplicity shows its beauty. When you say no to shallow pursuits, meaningful ones rise to the surface. The discipline of saying no is therefore not about deprivation, it is about alignment. It is about aligning your limited time and energy with what nourishes your body, mind and spirit. Each no is a doorway that leads you closer to the essence of who you are meant to be, and it is in this essence that happiness naturally unfolds. The present moment is the only reality we truly have, yet it is also the most neglected. The human mind has a tendency to wander, to escape from what is happening right now, into the memories of the past or the projections of the future. This wandering is the root of much of our suffering. We replay mistakes and regrets, wishing the past had been different. We anticipate problems, fearing that the future will bring loss or failure, and in this endless swing between what was and what might be, we miss the simple miracle of what is. Joy cannot be found in a yesterday that no longer exists, nor in a tomorrow that has not yet arrived. Joy is only accessible here, in this very breath, in this very step, in this very heartbeat. To practice simplicity is to return again and again to this truth. Happiness is not hidden in distant goals but revealed in the immediacy of life unfolding right now. One of the lessons from Shaolin practice is that the body is always in the present, but the mind is not. When you are training, your body is moving, breathing, striking, or holding still. It does not wander to yesterday or tomorrow, but the mind, if untrained, often drifts away. That is why martial training is not only physical, it is an anchor to the present moment. When you align the body and the mind in what you are doing, you enter a state of wholeness. This wholeness is where joy arises, because there is no split between where you are and where your thoughts are. You are not living half in the past, half in the future. You are fully alive in this breath, in this movement, in this second. And it is in such moments of total presence that simplicity reveals its power. For in the present moment, you realize you need nothing more. Life itself is complete. However, many people resist the present moment because it often feels too ordinary. They think happiness must come from grand experiences, dramatic changes, or extraordinary achievements. They overlook the truth that life is made up of countless small moments, and if we are blind to them, we are blind to life itself. Drinking a cup of tea, walking barefoot on the earth, feeling the rhythm of your own breathing, these are not trivial. They are gateways into joy. The discipline of simplicity trains us to slow down enough to notice them. When you no longer need life to be extraordinary in order to be satisfying, you begin to see that every moment contains its own quiet beauty. And when you can appreciate the small, the ordinary, the simple, then joy is no longer rare. It becomes woven into every day. This is why presence is the path to happiness, because happiness is not a future reward, it is a present awareness. The practice of finding joy in the present moment is not about ignoring responsibilities or pretending that pain and struggle do not exist. Life will always bring challenges, but even within difficulty, there are moments of presence that can steady the mind and calm the heart. The sound of the wind, the warmth of the sun, the kindness in a stranger's smile. These are not erased by struggle, they exist alongside it. If we are too distracted, we miss them, and suffering feels heavier than it needs to be. But if we train the mind to return again and again to what is immediate, to what is real right now, then joy becomes a companion even in hard times. It does not remove all pain, but it softens it. It reminds us that life is not only made of problems, it is also made of moments, and each moment is an opportunity to touch peace. This is the essence of simplicity, to find happiness not in more, but in noticing what is already here. When people hear the word stillness, they often mistake it for weakness, for passivity, for doing nothing. But true stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of power. Imagine a great mountain. It does not rush, it does not chase, it does not fight for recognition, yet its presence commands respect. Or think of a vast ocean. On the surface waves rise and fall, but in its depths there is a silence, a strength that is unmoved by storms. This is the nature of stillness. It is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is not fragile, it is unshakable. In Shaolin practice, stillness is cultivated not only in meditation, but also in action. Whether sitting in silence, standing in a posture for hours, or moving with slow precision, the purpose is the same: to discover the strength that arises when the body is steady, the breath is calm, and the mind is undisturbed. In modern life, people are constantly in motion, not only physically but mentally. Thoughts run faster than the body can follow. Worries about the future, regrets about the past, comparisons with others, endless planning, endless consuming. The mind becomes like a wheel that never stops turning. This constant motion creates exhaustion, and in exhaustion, clarity is lost. Stillness is the antidote. It interrupts the restless cycle and brings the mind back to its original state. When you practice stillness, you are not escaping life, you are regaining your power to engage with it. A still mind is not clouded by anxiety. A still body is not drained by unnecessary tension. A still spirit is not enslaved by fear. From this stillness, strength arises naturally. It is the kind of strength that does not need to prove itself, because it is rooted in stability rather than struggle. The cultivation of stillness requires discipline, because it often feels unnatural at first. Many people become uncomfortable when faced with silence or inactivity. They reach for distractions, for noise, for stimulation, because being still reveals what lies beneath. In silence, you hear your thoughts. In stillness, you feel your emotions. This can be unsettling, but it is also where growth begins. To sit with yourself without running away is one of the most courageous practices. It is like facing a mirror that shows not only your appearance, but also your inner state. Through this discipline, you begin to notice how often the mind seeks escape, how restless the body has become, and by observing without judgment, slowly, you begin to reclaim mastery. What once felt unbearable becomes a source of peace. What once felt empty becomes rich. The stillness you feared becomes the strength you carry. From this foundation, stillness becomes more than a practice. It becomes a way of being. You can walk through chaos without absorbing it. You can face challenges without being shaken. You can respond to life rather than react impulsively. Others may look for strength in aggression, in dominance, in accumulation, but the strength of stillness is different. It is subtle, invisible, yet undeniable. It is the power of balance, of patience, of endurance. It is the ability to remain calm when others are panicked, to remain clear when others are confused, to remain grounded when others are lost. This strength does not shout, but it speaks louder than words. It is the strength of a tree that bends in the storm, but does not break. It is the strength of a flame that burns steadily in the wind without being extinguished. In stillness, you discover that you do not need to chase strength. It is already within you, waiting for silence to bring it forth. When we look deeply at life, we see that the essence of happiness is not hidden in what is far away, but in what is near. It is not in what is complicated, but in what is simple. To clear away the unnecessary, to free ourselves from attachment, to practice the discipline of saying no, to return again and again to the present moment, and to discover the strength of stillness. These are not just ideas, they are practices. They are steps on a path that every person can walk, no matter where they come from or what they possess. Simplicity is not poverty, nor is it denial. It is clarity, it is freedom, it is the choice to value what truly matters, and to release what does not. The world around us will always encourage more possessions, more recognition, more noise. But the path of the Shaolin teaching reminds us that happiness is not found in adding, but in subtracting. The less you carry, the lighter you walk. The lighter you walk, the further you can go. So the question is not whether life can give you happiness. The question is, can you create enough space for happiness to enter? Can you simplify your thoughts, your actions, your surroundings, so that joy has room to breathe? This is the practice, not tomorrow, not someday, but here, now in this moment. And if you begin, even with small steps, you will discover that simplicity is not a sacrifice, it is a gift. It does not reduce your life, it expands. It does not take away, it reveals. For when the unnecessary is gone, what remains is the truth, and the truth is simple. Happiness is already here. You only need to make space to see it.